Before I launch into this review, let me say that I will be of course showing some gameplay off throughout this video, so if you feel that might be a bit of a spoiler for you, then do feel free to jump right to the end to the summary and rating which has been timestamped in this video, and that will give you my final review score without the gameplay footage. So what's this game about? Let me give you a bit of a backstory. You are some kind of cosmonaut that's trapped in this dying spaceship that's filled with all of these creatures that are straight from your nightmares. Your goal is to find your way back safely to Earth, and to do this you have to explore the ship and survive long enough to complete a series of objectives that you can see here on your wristband. So I'm going to launch into this review by starting with my favourite part, and that's the atmosphere. So this ship doesn't have much light. You're relying on this narrow torch beam that comes from your hand most of the time. And so you're surrounded by all of these ambient sounds like the creaks and groans of the ship, as well as other strange sounds that you wish you probably never heard. It really starts to make you feel quite small, vulnerable, and really claustrophobic, to the point that I would recommend having a few spare pairs of underwear on standby. In short, the atmosphere is absolutely blinding. Just take a look at this short 20-second clip.
Warning. Deployment of automatic defense systems has been authorized. Be sure to always remain inside the area allowed by your security credentials.
Now, in all fairness, to get the full effect, you have to experience this in virtual reality with a pair of headphones on, but hopefully it gives you some idea of the kind of atmosphere you get with this game. And if you felt quite tense just watching that short clip, wait until you're being chased by a 6-foot headless alien down a corridor. What I'm trying to say here is when it comes to atmosphere and creating psychological tension and fear, this game nails it. I'm also a huge fan of the visual style. Now, it might not be everyone's cup of tea. If you're a fan of sci-fi TV and movies back in the 60s, 70s and even 80s, classics like Star Trek or Alien, then chances are you'll probably enjoy this environment, which is filled with flashing colourful light grids, chunky computers, tape decks, and even zip disks that contain just over 100 megabytes in storage. Now, the graphics are fairly good for a Quest game, although there are some textures and sprites that are a bit below par when it comes to the rest of the visuals. For example, this jet of flame is very 2D and just doesn't look very realistic. But for the most part, the visuals are pretty solid. Now let's get into the gameplay itself. I found the game to be quite well balanced. There weren't many occasions where I felt it was unfair. There always seemed to be enough items around for me to make use of, and there weren't too many monsters, meaning that I could survive. But it always felt like just that I was surviving, barely. You have this oxygen meter that runs down, so you're forced to find these oxygen canisters scattered around the ship, so you don't have that luxury of time. And if you want to increase your chances of survival, you're going to have to scavenge different items from around the ship and put them into this machine to synthesize items like weapons and health, because there's not a lot around the ship. You also have to make clever use of these power cells. They also have a limited number of uses, and they're used to power certain rooms in the ship and turn lights on in that room, because a lot of the time the lights are the only thing that's going to permanently destroy an alien once you shot it. And it leads to some pretty interesting and tense situations. For example, here I'm running to get the battery cell from one room to put into another room that contains an alien that I've just shot, so I can kill it permanently before it comes back alive to attack me again. But even with the weapons you find or manage to create from scavenged parts, things like ammo, grenades and traps are pretty scarce. So sometimes you'll just need to rely on your own cunning to get you through. There'll be times when instead of fighting, the best course of action is running away, hiding, or throwing an object to briefly distract whatever is after you, so then you can get past without being attacked. So that feeling of just barely scraping by, that survival element to this game is another aspect that's done almost flawlessly. There are some small gameplay gripes that I have that are probably more personal to me. For example, I'd love to have the option to hide under a bed or inside a locker as another alternative to hide from the aliens rather than just ducking behind cover. And I found I didn't get much satisfaction from firing the guns. They just didn't feel that powerful, and the aliens hardly react when they get hit. But perhaps having underpowered weapons is partly by design to make you as a player feel a bit more powerless and at the mercy of your environment. Now let's talk about longevity. So technically you could complete all objectives on the ship in a single playthrough, I'd say in about under 2 hours, but realistically it will take you a few tries to do that. I would say that I sank in about 4 or 5 hours into this game before I managed to complete one full playthrough. But the environments are also procedurally generated, so what that means is that each time you play the game, the layout of the ship, the placement of the items and placement of the enemies are going to be different each time, which is going to give you a different gameplay experience every time you play. Also, after each playthrough you get a little breakdown of how you did, and along with that, sometimes you unlock these modifiers that you can turn on to change the game. These modifiers alter the weapons, alter the player stats and the enemies in the game, so it gives you a different gameplay experience. For example, if I turn this one on, I get more health but can carry less items. Or I can turn this one on, which will make all enemies in the game droids. So all of these different features give this game a lot of replayability that could give you tens of hours of gameplay. So before I give my final rating, I just want to say that I know there are reviewers out there that give games high ratings, even if the game doesn't really deserve it. But I want to explain here that I really try to only give high ratings to games on the Oculus Quest store if they are really something quite special. And with that, I think this game deserves a 5 out of 5. It's a survival horror game and it pulls off the feeling of both survival and horror masterfully. The oppressive atmosphere, the need to scavenge for items to keep yourself alive, and the use of your cunning to avoid monsters that infest the ship, they all come together to give an outstanding survival horror experience that I haven't seen matched on the Quest to date. It also has a ton of potential replay value, and so if you are in the market for a good survival horror game, I really recommend checking this one out. So that's it for this review. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Cosmodread. Is this a game you're planning to get and why? Let me know in the comment section below. If you've liked the video, please do hit that thumbs up button, and if you think I've deserved it, do hit that subscribe button and notification bell to be kept up to date with all the Oculus Quest content coming from this channel. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next video.